Thought it was really a very, very good meeting. I think Paul felt the same way, and everybody else did also. He's got not an easy job, and I don't mind going through a little bit of a slow process. We're getting there.
So, Phil, that's Donald Trump, like I said, sort of declaring victory right there. Yep. Alex suggested Paul Ryan left himself an out. There was a lot of suggested heading into that meeting that Paul Ryan was providing cover who wanted to create distance from Donald Trump. I can look at it the other way and say what Paul Ryan was doing was providing cover for those who want to move to Donald Trump, because we saw a whole lot more of that toward the end of the week.
Yeah, no question. Donald Trump declaring victory here, I think to Alex's point, it was a good experience for him. It was a good process for him, the start of the process. I think the end game, and we've actually talked about this a couple times, the end game for Paul Ryan is what is the open question for me right now. Where does he go from here? It looks like he's taking steps towards eventually endorsing the nominee, but we all thought, for providing cover perspective, that he wanted to keep those options open. Yes, he left himself wiggle room here, but how much, I think, is the big question. You talk about the areas where they actually are agreeing on. Okay, so according to officials involved in this meeting, it was on Supreme Court nominees. It was on life or abortion rights. It was on a couple of kind of obvious issues. But on areas where they disagree, the disagreements are so stark, are so extreme compared to if you want to talk tax policy, if you want to talk entitlement reform, if you want to talk all these issues. How does Paul Ryan ever endorse when those issues remain very far apart? And I don't actually know the answer to that, and I think that's kind of my open question as people start to move toward Donald Trump, and it appeared that Paul Ryan is one of those people. How does this actually end?
It seemed to be an official agreement to disagree. And Jill, you know, Paul Ryan didn't officially endorse, but what, like 9 or 10 committee chairmen did in the House? There seems to be a movement.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's true. But I think what this also demonstrates is the fact that again and again you have people who leave one-on-one meetings with Donald Trump being genuinely impressed with him. It seems to be kind of this charisma game that he's playing where they feel very much like he's listening to them, like he is a reasonable person that they can negotiate with down the line. The question is whether we actually see any concrete movement. You know, we know that people are concerned about his temperament. We know that they're concerned about issues like immigration and the Muslim ban. The question is, does he moderate on those issues at all? I mean, at this point, he hasn't shown any tendency to do that.
We saw a little bit of movement. You saw it in Congress, Jeff. You also saw Lindsey Graham, right? Lindsey Graham had a phone call, an odd phone conversation with Donald Trump. These guys have been beating up on each other like hard for months and months now. Now they had a phone call. Lindsey Graham said, no, I'm not endorsing, but you know what? Donald Trump's really funny. You know, he made me laugh there.
I think that says more about Lindsey Graham than Donald Trump sort of, you know, wanting to go toward this process. I think some of these people have to watch how much of their own credibility they may be losing here. No one has been farther out there on the limb, you know, being a skeptic as Lindsey Graham, and for him to like suddenly change his view. I think we are seeing things shift here, but I was struck by something Paul Ryan said yesterday in Janesville, Wisconsin. He said, we're beginning the process of discussing what unity in the party looks like. So that's about 3 steps toward unification there. But for Paul Ryan, it's all about issues. As Phil said, it really is about issues. I don't think he cares about these shiny object things. If Donald Trump comes around, or at least holds the line on some issues, he thinks it's fine. But I'm not sure that any of this matters. Donald Trump does not need Lindsey Graham. He's going to win South Carolina. He does not need some of these people. It's more important for House members and Senate members than it is for Donald Trump. The people are with Donald Trump.
What he needs is there not to be a third-party candidate.
No
he
doubt.
needs there not to be Ben Sasse or someone running from the right. You know, and Jill, the Washington Post had an article this weekend talking about these people, you know, from Mitt Romney to Bill Kristol, Mike Murphy, still trying to agitate to get that person out there. But that person doesn't seem to exist.
Yeah, I mean, at this point, it still looks like they're looking for that candidate. And I think very much to the point that you were talking about. I mean, there's still, you know, keep in mind, like, this is a guy who still has not had the past 2 Republican presidents. You know, Mitt Romney's still not on board. There are key elements of the establishment that are just not ready to go there, and that's significant.
Mitt Romney, Jeff Zeleny, Mitt Romney, though, still like going after Trump hard. I mean, how long do you think Romney can keep this up?
He can keep it up as long as he wants, but it doesn't matter. I do not think Mitt Romney does not control any votes other than his own and, you know, perhaps his sons and whatnot. I do not think it matters what Mitt Romney is saying here. And Ben Sasse, for all the talk about a third-party candidate, he was sanctioned yesterday by the Nebraska Republican Party. They voted in a meeting yesterday that he should stop talking about not supporting the nominee. So I think this idea of a third-party candidate is just that, Washington talk, and it does not matter.
You know, it'd be great to get comment from the Trump team on this, and perhaps a spokesman like, say, John Miller. The Trump spokesman.
Is he on the line?
From the 1990s right now. I want to play you a little more sound from this spokesperson, John Miller, this tape that surfaced over the last couple of days. Listen in.
Mick Jagger started calling her. She ended up going with Mick Jagger. And then she dropped drop Mick Jagger for Donald. And that's where it is right now. Where did you come from? I basically work for different firms. I work for a couple of different firms. And I'm somebody that knows. And I think somebody that he trusts and likes.
So, Trump later on, Alex, denied that this was him. He flat out denied it to the Today Show. There are a lot of people listen to those tapes and say, gosh, it sounds an awful lot like Donald Trump. Is this weird, or is this something that actually damages him?
Well, look, I think you have to, when stories like this come out, and there's so many of them with Trump, you have to imagine how would we all be reacting if a story like this had come out about John Kerry immediately after he secured the Democratic nomination in 2004, Bob Dole in 1996. That Bob Dole had seems to have impersonated himself as a spokesman several years ago. This is really outlandish, right? And I think there is a risk for the press, but for everybody, that the bar for Trump has been so progressively lowered over the course of this campaign, and that he has survived so many of these stories that we end up ruling out the prospect that there really are voters out there who see something like this and think, boy, that's really unusual. I was talking over this last week to a number of Republicans who are, rank and file Republicans, registered voters, not people who are elected officials or professional political consultants, about, how they feel about Trump now that he's the nominee. And the interesting thing was not just the level of discomfort, but that each one of them cited a different reason for why they felt so uncomfortable with him. That each of them recalled a different moment in his primary campaign, whether it was his comments about torture or his comments about prisoners of war, his comments about women, that there are so many different different avenues to choose from in order to describe and rationalize your discomfort with this guy.
Phil, about 30 seconds left before we go to break here. In addition to that Washington Post story with the audio tapes, the big New York Times takeout about Trump's complicated relationship with women over the years. Two pieces, sort of investigative, taking on Trump pieces in the last 5 days. Are we going to see more of this?
Yes, no question about it. Get ready for it, and this is the type of work that you're going to see come out with regularity from all major publications, because this is the process when you're the nominee that you're going to have to go through. You get vetted by publications. The New York Times story, I think, had been worked on for 6 weeks up to this point. Every publication is now doing this. They do this with both candidates. The big question I have is, when you look at all of these stories, do they stick? Tough stories on Donald Trump throughout the primary process never stuck. Will they stick from here on out? I'll tell you one thing. Hillary Clinton's team is going to hammer home every single one of these stories, try and make sure they stick. Will it work? That's the big question.